Hello everyone and welcome to this first tutorial on modeling. I'm Highelf and in this tutorial I'll be covering the very basics of modeling. So really for people that never really modeled before, so if you have some experience, I suggest you tune out right now. So the very basics being actually the controls to move around in Wings, the shortcuts and the keys that you'll need to know, the terms and words that you'll need to understand in order to, kind of model properly. So some of the really basic words. And lastly, manipulating geometry. So the actual modeling. Um, so yeah, before we start though, I would like to apologize for my English. I hope it's understandable. I'll do my best. So yeah. Um, So I suggest you already have, I presume you already have Wings 3D, but if you don't have it, just open an internet browser and go to wings3d.com and you have like a download link on the first page. So uh, it kind of takes 2 minutes to install and download, so just open that up and we can get started. Okay, so welcome to Wings 3D. This is your workspace right here, the gray area. And you have your grid right here to kind of help you along, mostly with it kind of helps you to know where you are, where your model is, so you're not kind of lost in this unlimited gray space. Okay, so let's get started on basic controls. Oh yeah, first of all, you might notice that my Wings 3D is just kind of a bit different. It has these blue bars. My menu background is yellowish and my actual background is a bit darker. You can adjust all this in Edit, Preferences, and all these tabs. You can kind of adjust these things to your liking. Um, I suggest you just kind of read through these options and set it all to what you like most. Okay, so let's go over the basic controls of movement. To rotate, click the middle mouse button once, and now you can just kind of move your mouse to rotate. To exit that, click the left or right mouse button, doesn't matter. In rotate mode, so let's say we're going to rotate mode, and if I press Q once, so don't hold it, you go into move mode. So all you have to do is press the mouse button, then Q. It's probably a different key on American or English keyboards. It's the key next to caps lock. So, um, next up would be, okay, so let's say we have, let's make a grid. Centering your camera on your selection is basically just pressing A. So select, let's say we want to center it on this here. Just press A, so the very first key, it's probably Q on American or English keyboards. So it just centers on that. Pretty simple. Okay, so now would be, okay, the cameras, let's say we have a sphere. Okay. Different cameras would be Y, Z, and X camera. And logically, it's just Y, Z, and X keys. So if you press X, you go to the X camera. If you press Z or Z, you go to the Z camera. If you press Y, you go to the top or Y camera. Use these a lot. I do use these a lot. So if you hold Shift and you press Z, X, or Y, you just go. So Y goes up, Shift Y goes down. It's just reversed. So yeah. Lastly would be from the basic controls would be these pyramids right here. So the shading, if you click the first pyramid, you get shading, so the edges of your model disappear, and the model gets lighted. So light affects the model. As you can see, this is wider than the edge. Yeah. So the other pyramid is 2D mode. This is basically to help you out with very complex models. Um, at least that's what I use it for, but it has a number of functions, I think. But yeah, that's just 2D mode. And wireframe, so if you press W on your keyboard, you can go to wireframe and it just makes your model see-through and the back vertices are still visible. So this is usually when you're modeling stuff inside other models, inside another model. So for example, inside a car or something, just a random example. If you now enable shading, you get a nice shading underneath your wire. So that's a nice effect to take a screenshot or something. Okay, so that's pretty much the basics on movements. Okay, so now let's run over the basic words and terms you'll need to know. So let's bring up let's make a cylinder, move this up a bit, and add a loop. I'll explain how I did those things in the next parts. So yeah, first would be a vertex. So one of these dots is basically vertex. A couple of dots are vertices, and then you have an edge, which is a combination of two vertices. Then you have a face, which is a combination of any number of vertices. Of course, it has to be more than two, because you can't make a face with two vertices. So, usually you want to model in in quads, which is a face with four vertices, or in triangles, which is a face with three vertices. So very simple again. Triangles are allowed, but they're not that good. So usually once you model in quads, pretty much everyone does. And then you have polygons, which is basically any face with more than um, three or four vertices. So for example, this face here has like well, yeah, I don't know how much, but a lot more than four. So that's a polygon. Then you have an object. So this is one object. You could bring up another totally different object, like so. And well, these are different objects, but if I were to save this and use it, well, if it was anything like what I wanted to model, I could, this entire thing is actually my mesh or my model, so it's a different thing, objects and models. But yeah, it's just a bit very simple again, so yeah. Then you have edge rings. So I'll explain how I select these later on. So this is a ring of edges that I selected. So, and this is a loop of edges. So it's a loop, it kind of goes, keeps going, doesn't end. Yeah, very basic. These are probably the most important things you'll need to know, what it is. So, yeah, that's about it for the name, for the words, for the names, yeah. So that's it for that. Let's move on. Okay, so for the last part of the tutorial, I'll be running over the basic geometry manipulation, so the actual modeling, like I said. Um, so let's bring up a cube, and we can mess around with this a bit. The first thing you'll need to learn is these modes right here. So that's vertice mode, edge mode, face mode, and object mode. The hotkeys for these are V for vertice mode, E for edge mode, F for face mode, and I actually don't know the hotkey for object mode, but you don't use this very often, so just click it or something, or search for the hotkey. Shouldn't take too long till you find it. So yeah. Um, Make sure you get used to these keys a lot. Um, I actually never click any of these except for object mode, of course, because you really have to be able to switch between them very fast. So let's run them down. So vertice mode, the vertices become a bit bigger, highlighted. You can select them. You cannot select edges or faces, anything, just vertices. And if you right click after selecting something, oh yeah, so basically just to create geometry, just right click without a selection, and yeah, you get this option to create stuff. The box next to some of the things is basically just to choose how many sections it has. If you make a cylinder and you're making an item for Mount&Blade, I usually use 8 sections instead of 16, so just a heads up. So yeah, vertice mode, if you select something, you get a totally different menu, and you have these move, rotate, and scale things. The name's pretty obvious. So moving on a normal is basically the normal of a face or an edge or vertice. It's basically the orientation it's going to. Kind of hard to explain, but yeah. Then you have on free, so that's just dependent on the camera. Again, if you're going to be moving or scaling or rotating on free, I don't think you can scale on free. So if you're just going to be moving or rotating on free, I suggest you use some of the camera modes, so Y, Z, or X, like I said earlier. So because if you move, so let's say we pick a Y camera, and now you kind of you go to move and free. You cannot move down or up because you're on the Y camera. It just works like that. So, the next couple things are basically just the axes. So you can move on Y, you can move on X, you can move on Z. Very simple. Rotating and scaling is the same principle. From scaling, don't mind these radial things. I don't even know the difference between radial axes and no normal ones. But yeah, it's the same thing. Just mess around with these if you're not comfortable with them. Well, yeah, just keep messing around until you really get used to them. Um, Next up would be some of the more difficult features, basically, but you'll probably be using them a lot. So first one is extrude. So again, in any mode, you can extrude, and basically just pull out whatever you have selected. So in this case, you have vertices selected, so it will pull out these vertices, let's say on a normal, into a new part of the mesh, as you can see. So if you extrude a face, you'll get a new part of the mesh, kind of pulls it out. If you extrude a edge, again, very simple. You probably want to use extruding a face a lot. And as you can see, there's a little difference between extrude region and extrude. So let's say we have a very basic blade. Let's say this is like a small part of the blade of a sword, okay? So we want to extrude this to make the blade a bit longer. If you go to the regular extrude and extrude on Y, you'll get this. As you can see, this is not really what you want. You want it to be nice and smooth. And it's like this because every part is actually a separate part. As you can see, they're not attached. So, as you probably thought already, if you extrude region, this does not happen. So, extruding a region is basically your selection, and it stays attached to that. So if I move this around now, it's nice and attached. So, like so, as you can see. And it doesn't give those ugly seams. Try not to forget about this, because if you extrude regularly when you had to extrude a region, it's really annoying to fix that. It's a bit hard work and it's really annoying. So next up would be, let's make a new cube. Insets. So in cube, in face mode, you can inset a face or kind of pull it inwards or outwards. But if you pull it outwards, make sure you move it up because now it's clipping. So just kind of move it just a little bit up, and now it's okay. So then you have beveling. Okay. So again, in all three modes, you can bevel, and it kind of adds an edge, a smoothing edge to whatever you have selected. So then you have bridging. Okay, so okay, let's make a new cube. Let's move this on the side. Whoops. And make another cube. So let's say this is an imaginary handle of a sword. So just imagine that. And let's say this is the blade of a sword. And you want to attach these. So on each of the sides you want an identical face. So the identical amount of vertices, in this case is 4. Here also. Just select those two and go to bridge. And they will be attached. Very simple. Next up would be, okay, cutting and connecting. So as I explained in my written tutorial, which is pretty old, so I didn't know everything about wings yet, you can cut an edge. So let's say we cut this in two. We have this floating vertice right now. It's not really what you want, because if you move this around, it's not looking really good. And as I said, you always want to model in quads, so what you have to do is cut these in two also. So you have vertices all around, and then just press C to connect them. Of course, this is a pretty hard way to do it. So an easier way that I only discovered a bit later is basically selecting one of the edges, pressing G, select the edge ring, like I explained in the words explanation part thing. So you kind of get the ring if you select one of the edges and press G. If you press C right now, it's going to automatically cut that in half and connect those. So it goes a lot faster. To select the loop, you just select one of the edges of a loop and press L. As a last note, what you do not want is clipping. So what's clipping? Basically, it's just geometry moving through geometry, so like so. You really do not want to have this. If you have this, your mesh is basically has basically bad geometry, so that's really not good. Also, what you want to avoid. So let's move this somewhat back in place. What you want to avoid is having real messy geometry. So, okay, for example, so we cut this in like 5 pieces or something. So you have like this, and then you kind of connect everything like so. So it happens that people kind of model like this and think they're doing right. But this is really messy. I mean, you have like triangles, you have 5-sided polygons, you have everything really. It's so messed up. It's really bad. So what you want is to work in nice quads. So if you would want to make this a bit more complex, make it have more detail, all you'd have to do is add loops. So let's delete that again. Select one edge, press G, press C. Select one edge, press C, G and C. Again here, you could just simply do that, like so. So I'm just continuously pressing G, selecting something, pressing G, pressing C, and then space to deselect. Oh yeah, I probably didn't say that. So space is just deselecting, so yeah, that's pretty important. I forgot that. Yeah, so this is more like it. This is really a nice geometry. this is what you're aiming for. If you want to look at the poly count, let's say this here, this has 256 faces. So there's a list of polygon counts approximately that you want to go for if you're modeling for Mount&Blade. So they are important. So the more polygons, the the slower you'll. So if you have like a billion polygon sword, for example, theoretically, and you put that in game, it will crash simply because it's too much for the game to handle. So the less polygons, the better. So yeah. Um, that's about it for the basic manipulation. Like I said, mess around with these things, the options, just kind of to get used to everything. The next couple tutorials will probably be items, so like a shield and a sword and a helmet probably. Maybe rigging. I'll probably do UV mapping and texturing too. And maybe just maybe I'll do a tutorial completely on getting an item game. So starting from the model and ending up with the item game, so scripts and importing it into BRF edit and everything. But I'm not too sure about that. So I hope this helped somewhat. Yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.